Hello and welcome to my podcast. Now, things are changing afoot by quite a lot. I have decided that, so all these people listening to this podcast now will probably be people that have listened to my podcast before, but I'm changing it up and I'm bringing in my wonderful friend, Rebecca Megson Smith, of 33 years, to 33 years. 33 years. It is 33 years. To be my co-host. So welcome, Beck, to the podcast. Our new name for the podcast is, well, we've got a long version and a short version. So the long version is Mrs Mummypenny Talks with Ridley Writes.
And the short version is the Lynn and Becky podcast. The Lynn and Becky show. The Lynn and Becky show.
The Lynn and Becky show. And I bet you we'll end up calling it the Lynn and Becky show because Mrs Mummypenny Talks with Ridley Writes is quite a lot of words. Too many words. but yeah, you're the writer and I'm the talker, or you were always the one really good at English. I was the one always really good at maths. So I feel we complement each other well on a podcast. And we've been looking for a project to work together for years. And inspiration struck a few weeks ago and I messaged you and I was like, shall we do it? And you were like, yes, we should. So yeah, what are we going to be talking about on our podcast though? This is the question.
What aren't we going to be talking about, I think, is a bigger question. No, we are going to be talking about what it's like to be a woman in 2021 and all of the many and various issues, many of which should have gone away and haven't gone away. And just the realities of work-life balance and the joys and tribulations of children, small and bigger, because we've got slightly different ages in our kids, and then broader issues on the wider world, I think. And
I want to look at things like gender inequality with pay, with future things like pensions, and how particularly relating to my subject of money, how women tend to look a lot after the day-to-day things of money and don't look too much at the future of money and protecting their future selves. So I think that there will still be a money element that comes into it because obviously that's my expertise. But then I think...
Well, I'll be bringing in the side around women's stories and... how publishing as an industry is still very much a male-dominated sphere, and it's easier to get published if you're male. And there's even before you even get to a stage of publishing, there's a real challenge with women feeling like their story is interesting, like they have any entitlement even to tell those stories, and how that happens. You know, that's all around what happens in the media. It's all around advertising, the stories that are told us about ourselves every day, through just every possible medium.
And I also think and I think this is something we should probably spend some time talking about for our intro podcast number 1, is we've had a huge amount of life experience in some pretty big things that absolutely we're not the only ones to have experienced it, but I think we have been through quite a lot of quite significant things, and we have a lot in common with each other, but that I just think that a lot of women will just appreciate listening to the stories and that survival is possible, because and we should probably like go through some of those life events. But shall I start with an intro to our, maybe go through teenage, then 20s, then 30s, then 40s?
I think it's worth sharing the Heather Shimmer conversation we had before we we started recording.
Yeah, so if you're watching this on YouTube, hopefully you will notice my beautiful lipstick, where I've attempted to recreate Heather Shimmer, which is the lipstick that we used to buy with our pocket money from Superdrug when we were like 11 or 12 or 13, and we thought we looked absolutely amazing.
And in time for our next show, I will get my own version. It's still for sale. This is not an advertisement, but Rimmel do still sell Heather Shimmer, and these days you don't have to go down to Superdrug to buy it, even if you could. But you can actually get it through Amazon, so that's exciting. Mine will be arriving tomorrow.
Times have changed. You can order stuff online now. But yeah, so we met when we were 11. At Humphrey Davy School in Penzance. We both had the absolute joy. Well, me from birth grew up in Penzance. You moved down to Cornwall in the summer holidays before that September, didn't you? So you were brand new to the area, brand new to the school, didn't know anybody, and we were in 1H2 together, year 7 of secondary school, and became really close friends from that point onwards. It's absolute, it's idyllic, like living in a place like that as a child. It was an incredible place. I don't think we appreciated it as children or teenagers. I think it's hurting us more now that we don't live in that place with the sea. My bedroom used to have a view of Mounts Bay and St Michael's Mount, so I just had to look out my bedroom window and see the massive expanse of sea. I
lived just down the road in Long Rock, and used to walk every day with the dogs along the coastal path or along the beach to Mares Iron, and St Michael's Mount was just a thing you looked at all the time. You didn't, you know, it was lovely, but it was just St Michael's Mount, right?
Yeah. I don't think I even went there when I was sure?
A child.
I don't know. I don't think
we didn't drag you there. I mean, me and Mum and Dad used to go across to St Michael's Mount relatively frequently. Back in the day, you used to be able to go around the gardens at the base of St Michael's Mount without having to pay. It was a free thing that you could do. You only had to pay if you were going up to the castle.
There you go. I don't remember ever going there as a child. I just remember spending every single possible day on either Long Rock Beach or Mares Iron Beach, Eastern Green Beach back in the day when I was really little. Used to go there. And yeah, it's just the most perfect idyllic childhood. But so yeah, we spent our teenage years together. I should read out that poem you wrote for me in my 40th. I haven't got it to hand now. I'll save that for another week. But it's just a really incredible list of all the big memories of our childhood and teenage years. Because then things all went a little bit, what's the right word to use? Well, my mum died when I was 16, and suddenly life changed and had to grow up, and it was a bit of a...
Life got very serious very suddenly, didn't it?
It got so serious very suddenly, and I'm really not sure how I did it. I mean, you survive these things, but yeah, the death of a parent, the death of your mum particularly is a really difficult one to get through, particularly when you haven't lived any of your life. And I know you think as a 16-year-old you like rule the world and you've done everything, but of course you haven't experienced a single thing. So
I think that's a really interesting point, actually, because I think as an adult, you look at children, you look at kids, and you're looking at them from the position you are in the future. Whereas as children, as 15 and 16, well, 16-year-old children, I just had my 16th birthday. You're experiencing it as in you're a fully grown person. You don't see yourself as a child. You don't feel like a child. You just feel like a human being with feelings, and it's a very strange experience. Yeah, because adults look at you as a child, but that doesn't. When my own dad died, I remember there being a sense of almost, it wasn't so bad for people who were younger. So okay, it was my niece and nephew's granddad, but he was very, very much in their lives. But there was some sort of sense that there was an age seniority. Like, it was really bad for my mum. It was then it was not as bad, but still really bad for my sister. And then it was bad, but not as bad for me. It was some sort of ridiculous sense of seniority that, you know, depending on how many years you'd lived on the planet, as to how hard the death of somebody affects you. But it doesn't work like that in real life.
Yeah. Let's just get the death stuff over with. So my mum died when I was 16. Then my dad died when I was 19. Your dad died when you were 20. I'm going to get the age. 22.
I think.
And then your mum died how many years later?
11 years later.
11 years later.
Yeah.
So we are in that quite rare situation where we've both lost our parents, and we were talking about this on WhatsApp the other day, but I still, at the age of 44, hate having to say I'm 44, I know very little people who have lost both parents, particularly at younger ages like that. Like, you know, me being 19 for my dad, you being 22, it's by the by, isn't it? Similar sort of age. It's such a huge life event that has immeasurably affected our personalities, our life choices, pretty much everything in life. Those big events change.
Yeah, and I only know one other person, as we were saying. So yes, it's still more normal to have at least one parent, if not both parents, when you're in your 40s, than it is to not.
So we had all that fun stuff to deal with. Not fun at all. But then we both went on similar sort of academic paths. So we both did A levels, then we both went off to university. So despite those sort of traumatic things happening to me, I still made sure I followed the academic route, probably to run away as an escape. So I went off to do maths in London at Brunel, and you went off to do English in Lancaster.
Yes.
You went proper far away.
I think Durham would have been the only further place I could have gone and still been in the country. I'm not sure, maybe that's not quite right, but I definitely headed as far north as possible.
Yeah, and we had a few visits between universities, which was always lots of fun. And then sort of 20s life, work took over, basically. I didn't have my first child till I was 30, so most of my 20s were spent working the corporate ladder, training to be an accountant, working in the city, working for HSBC and Tesco's, and you did a similar corporate thing, but for a shorter amount of time than me, didn't you?
Yeah, well, so I mean, I wanted to as I was coming into my final year of university, I absolutely loved my degree in English. I have to say, at the time, it didn't help me in terms of my own writing ambitions, because I was so overwhelmed by the amazingness of all the great writers that I was reading at the time. But I was certainly inspired. I wanted to carry on. I wanted to do a PhD in English. I sort of decided that if I couldn't write as well as Virginia Woolf, then at the very least I could sit alongside her and become an academic. And my mum and dad actually sat me down on New Year's Day, 1998, I guess it must have been, and they said, "Now then, love, what are you going to do when you graduate?" And I said, "Well, I'm going to do a master's, and then I'm going to do and how are you going to pay for that?" "Well, I'm hoping that I'm going to get funding." "And what's the chances of getting funding?" Anyway, long and short of it was, by the end of New Year's Day 1998, I'd agreed to sign up to do a PGCE, which if you'd ever known me, was hilarious, because the whole of my life, because I loved English, everybody said, oh, you're going to be an English teacher, and I would say, no, I'm not going to be an English teacher. So it was quite ironic that in the end I went, oh god, okay, I'll go and be an English teacher. But I got 3 weeks into doing the PGCE and just felt deeply sick. You know, you're in a classroom, particularly like in the A-level classrooms, right? You're in a classroom and you're on the other side of the desk of people that really aren't that much younger than you. And just that sense of, well, I've come through the system, I've been spat out the other side, and now I'm back here. It felt really oppressive. But I stayed, finished the course.
Yeah, you did it, didn't you? You got your PGCE.
Got my PGCE. And then I did a couple of crazier things. So I ended up working for the Oxford Playhouse. I became
oh my god, yeah, I came to see. Now the actor that was in it was Mark Strong.
You came to see Speed the Plough.
Thank you.
There you go. Yes, you did. Yes, so I worked at the Oxford Playhouse. I was front of house supervisor. I was bar supervisor to begin with, then moved on to front of house supervisor, responsible for 100 volunteer ushers, blah 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 blah. And in many senses it was great, because when you work in theatre, and particularly when you work in theatre, it's all evenings and weekends, which on the one hand is great. On the other hand, you're working when everybody else is having a good time, but then generally you end up drinking afterwards and staying up late and then sleeping in late, and so it repeats. So it feels a lot like a student kind of way of living in some senses. It's bloody awful money, and I was living in Oxford, which is really quite an expensive place to live. And I was exhausted, and also my dad died whilst I was working at the Oxford Playhouse. All of those things bundled together. So then I left and worked for a startup technology company called Oxford Virtual Markets. And this is one of the really funny things. So you are now, no, I know, you are now a writer, you're a published author, you write a blog, you write for a living. And at the time when we were at school, you were the mathematician, I was the writer. Yeah. This particular period in our history is really funny, because I start working for Oxford Virtual Markets and discover I'm a bit of a whiz with numbers. Who knew? It wasn't just because I was sat next to Lynn that I could do stuff with maths. Actually, I'm really capable myself. Good with numbers, good with Excel, and really good with databases. And after Oxford Virtual Markets, I ended up working for Reuters, who then became Thomson Reuters, and went up the greasy pole, as you know, very similar to you. So I became global head of fixed income data. For what that means to most of the people listening, very little, I expect, but basically I was responsible for 450 people around the globe, and
I remember clearly at that point in time. So we were, I'm going to put us at late 20s then. Yeah. So maybe, so I'd been in quite a long relationship through my 20s and maybe just come out of it, and I was working at Tesco's in quite a successful finance job. You were doing this job in Reuters, and I just remember us having this conversation of it was maybe my destiny that I would end up doing this corporate job, but it wasn't yours.
That's the funniest thing. Like, so I'd done the teaching qualification and thought, I really don't want to do that. And then really kind of, what I definitely didn't want to do was work any kind of corporate job. I didn't want to work in any situation where I had to, you know, you have to give your life to these companies. And that's great if that's what you want to do, but I wanted to write a novel. I mean, come on, this is the antithesis of that. But I was supporting a significant other, and part of the predominant motivation for going up the greasy pole was financial. But I have to be honest and say, you know, there are also lots of elements of working in that corporate environment that are really not necessarily just, I was going to say really good, but that's not what I mean. They're very they're kind of addictive in some senses. It is very much, particularly I'm a bit of a good girl personality type, so the corporate environment it rewards you, I think, and it it sort of feeds a material side of you and an ego side of you, I think.
And it's safe as well. So
yes,
you've got that, particularly when you've worked up the corporate ladder. So in our late 20s, no responsibilities in terms of children. Okay,
no.
maybe like a partner or husband, yeah, you get this guaranteed check through. And I remember in my late 20s, I was probably earning maybe, sorry, a cat meowing, maybe 40, 50 grand, which is quite a lot to be earning by then. And you've got that regular paycheck coming in. Like I had more money than I knew what to do with. It was, and yeah, you just get reliant on that paycheck, don't you? And there's not much you can do wrong to lose it as well. It was,
Well, it's interesting. I think there is a slight difference, I think this is okay to say, between how you and I work, because I think I lived in endless fear's almost too strong a word, but I think it was underneath it all that I had to work really hard to be worth that money. I have slight sort of issues about how much I'm worth financially, I suppose, or I certainly did at the time.
That's a whole nother topic for a podcast, isn't it?
Isn't it just? Yeah. But and I have to say that I had I had an expensive habit in the name of my partner at the time. So whilst my salary was good, I was supporting supporting a household and a partner who was not working. He was studying and then volunteering and then
who you ended up marrying?
Well, yes, exactly, and then divorcing. So
yeah. We've also got that in common. We're both orphans and we're both one-time divorcees. You have subsequently remarried, but that's a whole, that's almost like your 30s, isn't it? Your 20s was doing the work, getting married, getting divorced.
Yeah.
And then everything changed in your 30s, where the big event at the beginning of your 30s was your mum dying, which was complete. I was talking to one of my children actually, because we were watching the Bake Off, which is all about stand up to cancer. So he was asking questions about cancer, and there was a story of a lady who was talking about her cancer and she ended up dying. And I just said to my son, I have these very open, honest conversations with my children. Oh yeah, Becky's mum, she found out she had cancer and she died within 10 days.
I mean, it wasn't quite that quick, but it was pretty quick. So I mean, she started feeling ill in the January, February, and as it happened, I mean, everything sort of happened all at once. So I just moved in with her. The divorce had come through. I'd sold the house that we'd bought. If you want another money one, we bought at the top of the market, sold at the bottom of the market. Oh yeah, really smart. Anyway, but just needed to separate, so we just had to do that. But yeah, so the house had been sold, and the divorce had come through, and I'd moved back in with my mum and was really happy to do that. And I was working out a really long period of notice that I'd given to Thomson Reuters, because I'd decided this was my moment now. I was going to go and, I don't know, have a sabbatical, go and find a cottage somewhere and write a novel for 6 months and what have you. But anyway, I was living with mum, moved in, she wasn't feeling very well in the January, February time. I was sort of saying, well, it's this time of year, it's all a bit crap, you are getting older, mum, maybe, don't worry about it too much. Eventually she went to the doctors, they did loads of tests. She went into hematology, they did blood transfusions. They said, this was the real trigger point for me, they said after she'd had the blood transfusion that she should basically, she might feel a bit woozy to begin with, but should be like a new person. And she slept solidly for over 24 hours, basically. At which point I'm like, this probably isn't quite, there's something else going on here. Eventually, finally, in the June, I think, early June, late May, early June, they diagnosed that she had primary stomach cancer and a whole bundle of secondary cancers, because stomach cancer spreads.
Mm-hmm.
And then she died on the 1st of July. So she went into a hospice the last week of June, and she went in ostensibly just to get her meds stabilised, and so that I could get us set up at the house. So I needed to get a bed downstairs, I needed to get her a wheelchair. We thought, they'd said she had probably until October, so we thought we had some time. And yeah, she went in and didn't come back out. So
yeah, it's it's a discussion I have. So one of my close friends, his mum has had a stroke and has survived the stroke, and she's been immeasurably changed, and it's life is very difficult. And then likewise, my other friend Jem, her dad had cancer and lived for maybe a couple of years where he was in a lot of pain and constant medical treatment. And then you've got like my parents who just had a heart attack and died just like that. It's that whole discussion of a parent that lives for a long time in a lot of pain, or a situation where they just go. It's like they're not equally bad, they're just different situations. But I feel quite grateful in a way that my parents, they did die quickly, they didn't experience pain, and they didn't have to go through some of the more traumatic later on diseases like dementia, or where you can live for a really long time in a lot of pain. And so I can reflect back all these many years later and think that there are different situations, there are worse situations, and also like we're never going to have to look after our parents in their older age. So many women we know will be in a situation where they've got children and they've got parents to look after.
And also almost the fact that once the children leave home, then the caring shifts over, doesn't it? And becomes, you're caring for older people, so your whole life is just
caring.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's really interesting that I think you're right in how you've just expressed it. There are no the one is never better than the other, I don't think. The quick death versus the long drawn out. I think you've got challenges in both situations. I remember when Dad died, he'd had you remember he had a heart condition. I think we were about 17 when he was first diagnosed as having a faulty heart valve, and we were forever just waiting for him to have the heart valve replaced, and waiting, and then he 1999 he got pneumonia, but he was on a wait list. We were expecting any day now that he was going to go in and have the heart valve replaced. Got pneumonia, was taken into hospital, was taken up to Derriford in Plymouth, which when you live in St Earth is a really long way to go, by the way. And he died in hospital, ostensibly waiting to have his operation. And I remember not long afterwards, when I went back to work at the Oxford Playhouse, somebody saying, "Oh, I suppose it's not so bad because you knew he wasn't very well." No, just as a top tip, listeners, never ever say, "I suppose it's not so bad," before anything to do with anybody else's death, however well-meaning you might be on it. Yeah. Let them tell you something's not so bad, but never say it yourself, because that was quite a, yeah.
Yeah, well, obviously it's a standout comment memory to you. Yeah, so that's some of the difficult things we've had in our lives. But then in 30s, I spent most of my 30s being pregnant, bringing up little children. That is basically the total of my 30s. And trying to balance a career in that as well, until I just got to the point where I almost just couldn't do it anymore. And because I was always the breadwinner, the one bringing in the money. And I got an opportunity where I could get a chunk of money paid off from EE, where I worked until 2015. And no part of me thought, oh, I'll put that 40 grand into the mortgage. It was, this is my opportunity to set up my business. And it means that because I was paying for most of the bills, and that I could continue doing that for, I think I had 18 months where I needed to make it. And it was such a, like, I'd been in the corporate world for 16 years in a row, bar maternity leave. So it was a huge sort of big risk to take, particularly as I was setting up a business, Mrs Mummypenny, which nobody else had done. I was pretty much winging the business model. I was sort of taking each month as it come. I always had belief that I had a really great idea that nobody else was doing, and I had the great corporate background to almost carry me through a lot of the sort of the business side and the communication side.
You're a trained accountant. I mean, you know, that needs to be out there as well, right? You know, you've got all the skills and the knowledge and the passion for it. I think that was always one of the things that, like, you know, it's that overnight success thing, isn't it? It wasn't. You were writing late at night on doing kind of pricing comparison stuff and doing that kind of work very much as a passion project almost to begin with, weren't you? Before 2015.
Yeah, it started before. It started in 2013. Because I'd always been like that person that my friends could talk to about, oh, where do I get the best deal for this? Where do I get the best deal for that? I even helped a few friends like sort of consolidate debts and, you know, work out what was going on with all their credit cards when they were a bit of a mess. So it was I suppose it was a natural thing to do. And being an accountant, I was saving money for companies, wasn't I? So it just felt a bit more of I always wanted to do something that would make a difference to people's lives. And I know that sounds really like it's one of those things people say, but I really did. And I was never achieving that working for bloody Tesco or EE or HSBC. But they met a need. Yes, I was a qualified accountant and worked my way up the corporate ladder, earned a lot of money, spent a lot of money. Ended up getting married, which ended up costing me a lot of money. And now I'm in this situation where, I've got an incredible business where I talk about money, write about money, and help so many people save money. Like, the messages I get on a daily basis is just, I don't do enough of those messages. It's just like, it bowls you over with just the things people have been able to do and achieve.
And it's still such a taboo subject. I know this is something we will talk about in future podcasts, but money is such a taboo subject. And and even the idea of helping people with money is something that I think we all feel like that comes with strings attached usually, doesn't it? Like, people, even independent financial advisors to some extent, that, you know, they're getting something from somewhere when they're helping you make those decisions.
You've got to pay them a lot of money. That's the problem with that one.
Yeah.
And you've got to have a lot of money to get the advice from financial advisors, financial planners. So there's this sort of middle market of people that have, and it's like it's quite a lot of money, like 100 grand's worth of investments or pension money. Then you might struggle to get sort of proper financial advice from somebody because they want you to have like 200 grand, 300 grand worth of money to play with, because then it's worth it for the fees for them. But it's I absolutely adore my job and all that it brings to my life and all the people that I can help. So that's what I do now. And then and then our paths met last year, where, so you are a writer.
So my 30s were spent leaving the corporate world, and effectively in my sort of early 30s I moved to Bristol and started following my passions in a bigger way. So I was doing a lot more work with theatre. I very effectively dropped out. I kind of gave myself a sabbatical, although being me, I worked the whole year of my sabbatical. And and knew that I wanted to do stuff with writing. I did a master's in journalism at UE, and worked in theatre and carried on working in marketing, went and worked for an academic publishing house, and everything was sort of around and about writing. I'd set up Ridley Writes. I'd set up Ridley Writes as a blog back in 2011, I think, same year that Mum died. And I was writing blogs reasonably regularly, depending, I think, depending how busy life was, on all sorts of things. And then, and I kept sort of, and knew I wanted to do something in my own business as a writer and as somebody helping other people write, but I didn't know quite what it was. And it took me quite a few years of figuring that out, really. And then it sort of all kind of came together in the last couple of years in terms of developing myself as a writing coach, and also as a developmental editor, in addition to doing kind of copywriting and writing content for other people. So it's a real mix of things. But as you say, last year, our two worlds collided in a bigger way than usual.
Yeah, so you actually helped me to write my book in the most incredible way, because I am not I can write a blog, but actually, so I learned last year, writing a book's a little bit different to writing a blog. So yeah, we had basically weekly meetings to keep me on track with the whole process, but also you taught me almost like the academics around writing a book and structure and story, and you there was the really potentially traumatic meeting where you'd read through my first draft and you had to give me the feedback, where, considering this is like two best friends in a working situation, where you had to tell me that some of it wasn't up to scratch. It wasn't a rewrite, far from it. It was just that you need to be writing it in a different way, and be consistent in your chapters in this way. So there was a big chunk of feedback to be given, but you turned it into the most incredible book. So yeah, it was really lovely to.
What was really beautiful about working on your book was and I think what was missing, and what I think we were able to work together to make sure that you were able to put in there, was this real heart bit, the bit that you just said earlier, and you said it with that sense of, everybody says they want to make a difference, but actually I really do. And the real heart of why it matters to you to work with money and to help other people with money was not, that story wasn't as prevalent, it wasn't as front and center as I think it needed to be. And I think the book is so much stronger and is, I think, so much more accessible. I think that's the other key thing, really, for other people to kind of see the human story of why money, money is part of our lives. It's like I said before, it's that taboo thing, it's that sort of dirty thing that nobody really likes to talk about, but actually it shapes us, our formative experiences, and then how we live our lives from there on. And I think, by bringing your story into that, that has really made that a very powerful book.
Yeah. So
it was a joy. It was a joy. And also, I have to say as well that you are brilliant at taking feedback. So although it was a sort of a sense of, okay, I'm not going to be able to turn up and say, this is fantastic, let's just hit publish. You are also the kind, you were very much like, lay it on me, I just need to know, I want to get this, I want to do this. You have such a drive to do things well.
Yeah, no, I loved that process last year. I don't know about future books to come, we'll see, because I self-published the book, and I would really like to have a published book one day, and this is sort of part of that journey to get there. But yeah, I'll have to make sure, if I do have a published book, that they allow me to appoint, and hopefully they pay for, my own writing coach and guide and editor. But so you do that for like lots of other people now, right? It's this job you were you were sort of born to do, but it's taken you through all that life story to get there.
Long time to get here. Yeah, absolutely. Which I think is a lot about it is a lot about entitlement, and that sense of, you know, being allowed to live the life that you dream of. I think it's something that I would go as far as say, I think it's certainly something that women in particular are, it's another podcast episode, but I think there is a real thing about stepping into the dream of the life that you want to live that is really challenging as a woman. And helping other people to step up and to recognize the value of their own stories, and that and to help them in getting those words down on paper and getting their stories written, and to help shape those stories is, you know, I remember years, you know, right from 2015, you saying how much you loved your job, and it almost like it's your opening statement on any conversation, or your amazement, which is the other thing, isn't it? Like, being amazed at loving our jobs is such a strange thing, but that's where you were, and certainly that's where I'm probably still are, and that's certainly where I am, where I'm really eager to get back to work. It's not a thing that I think, oh God,
that you dread.
The alarm's gone off, I don't want to do this. I don't have an alarm anymore, I have small children. Nobody needs an alarm when you have small children if you like to get up at 5:30 in the morning. But it's just work I love, and like you say, that sense of making a difference and helping other people is phenomenal.
Yeah, it is. It's amazing. And with the children thing, I'm probably 10 years ahead of you, aren't I, with children? So most of my 30s were in that children phase where you started a little bit later. So you have very little children now.
Yeah, 2 and 4.
Which is a tough time trying to fit everything in. Also, personality wise, you do like to do everything, so that makes it even tougher.
Yes, that workaholic tendency that was so usefully exploited in the corporate world is now driving me into the ground with motherhood and running my own business. Yes, no, so it's fine. It's good. I love being busy. I love also not being busy.
Yeah.
What I most love doing is reading and writing and really kind of lounging about type activities. But
that's what I was just going to say. You are like full flow mid in the process of writing your first proper bona fide novel, aren't you? So.
Yes, I am. Indeed, I am. Yes. That's happening. About 35,000 words in.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah. So that's good. That is the bit of the middle section, though. So this is often known as the part where everything can get a bit clunk. So I'm coaching myself through, and actually I have a writing coach as well. I mean, I believe so wholeheartedly in what I do that I am very happy to hire somebody else to do it for me, because I think it's really important having somebody there sort of holding your hand. Writing can be such a lonely experience. So
yeah, and there are, I mean, I'm a very structured person. So when I was writing my book, I had like an Excel spreadsheet, but there were times of it where you get really like demotivated, and just having that other person to either just say to you, it's okay, you can have like a day off or a week off or whatever, or to like question the plan, to say, no, I think you're being a little bit ridiculous there with expecting.
Or I think it's just somebody else who cares about what you're doing, because, you know, in the process of writing a book, and you know, unless you are already a traditionally published author with a publisher waiting for you, generally speaking, nobody's ever going to turn up and say, hey, we need this book. And so even the most motivated person at points during that process is going to be like, nobody really needs this book. So that's what's great about having a coach or somebody alongside going, we need this book, you need to write this book.
So we've both had very big life events happen, but we've both sort of come to the place where we're at, a level of contentment, certainly with careers, and you are now happily married with children. I'm sure it will happen for me again at some point.
I'm sure it will. My eyebrows were raised in terms of surely not any more children, right? But maybe you do want to. Like, I shouldn't query that. It's up to you. If you want to have more children, go for it. Go for it.
Not having more children, but I was going to say, but don't hold me to that. But soon I won't be able to, because I'm 44. So, you know, soon our next stage of life, menopause will happen. Can't wait for that one.
All about the menopause. It's going to be so exciting.
so that's our lives, and we'll be talking about all things that affect women and feminist issues. So we've got a long list of areas. Sometimes we'll bring in guests, sometimes it'll just be us chatting, but as you can see from this, I don't know how long we've been talking for, maybe like half an hour, 40 minutes. I don't have a timer. A while. We can talk.
You know, yeah, we're good at talking. That's definitely
and totally unscripted as well. Woohoo! So thank you everybody for listening to our first episode of the Lynn and Becky show.
Sponsored by Heather Schiller.
Sponsored by Mrs Mummypenny and Ridley Writes. But go check out our websites. If you're new to this, then go see Becky. If you're one of Becky's fans, go check out all my stuff on social media and stuff. And thanks for listening or watching, and we'll see you
soon.
Bye.
Bye.